Hey YouTube, what up? So I want to sound off on something that happened a little while ago. All right, this happened a minute ago. All right, the Pusha T and Drake beef diss track situation. During that whole back and forth, that whole situation, something came up, right? And it was a photo of Drake in blackface. And, understandably, some people, particularly some black people, were offended by the photo. Understandably, right? Um, Drake explained and spoke out about the photo. You know, rightfully he should, right, to set the record straight. So Drake had said that the photo was for a project that was about young black actors struggling to get roles, being stereotyped and typecast, right? So that's why he wore the whole blackface to sort of symbolize that, right? And as well, the T-shirt company, you know, the Canadian streetwear company, um, Two Black Guys, they released a statement as well on the situation. And their statement is, quote unquote, we feel that Drake, who is a longtime friend of the brand, was brilliantly illustrating the hypocrisy of the Jim Crow era, the subtleties of Drake, a young black man, mimicking how white men use to mimic and dehumanize black people, may be lost in a rap battle. But we should not be distracted from the issues that are still affecting our communities. So, those were the responses from Drake and the clothing, that Canadian streetwear company. All right. So Pusha T, he wasn't really feeling that. He wasn't feeling that response, right? So in an interview with Los Angeles Real 92.3, you know, Pusha T dismissed Drake's response, pointing to his lack of activism as he's become one of the biggest artists in the world. So Pusha T says, quote unquote, "You're silent on all black issues, Drake. You don't stand for nothing. You don't say nothing about nothing. You have all the platform in the world. You were so passionate back then." Yeah, question mark. You were so passionate back then? Question mark. No, you weren't. That's number one. That's what I know. These are his truths. See for yourself. Um, so I want to speak on this. All right, I want to speak a little bit on this. All right, Pusha T. It's interesting. On one hand, he was distancing Drake from blackness. Remember, within his rapping or his diss track, he made references to Drake and him having like a lack of blackness. Well, maybe not point blank like that, but it was subtle and not so subtle references to Drake and his identity, his racial identity, right? So I find that really interesting now that you know he is saying that Pusha T is saying what he's saying, or that he said what he said in regards to this situation. But I will say, like, are we putting this same expectation on other rappers? You know, particularly other rappers who are not mixed or biracial, who make up the majority of the rap industry in terms of you know the performers. You know, honestly, when you think of a rapper, monoracial black men would probably come to mind, not biracial men who identify as black. But are these men speaking up on the issues? You know, because I really don't think it's Drake's job to be speaking on black issues, considering, well, African American issues, black issues, considering that he is a mixed race, half white or half Jewish, or half white slash Jewish, half black person, you know, man. You know, would people, what would the typical black population in America, and probably just, we'll stick with America. Let's just stick with America because that's where we at, right? Would they even feel comfortable with Drake speaking on these issues? Honestly, would they want Drake to really speak on these issues? You know, like, because we have, you know, kind of like situations improve where it's like, oh, you know, when Jesse Williams did it and Colin Kaepernick did it, you know, black folks, you know, particularly monoracial black men, were calling them all kinds of half breeds and saying that they need to stop speaking on issues that ain't really about you, right? You speaking on stuff that you ain't really even involved in. Basically, where they're getting at is you're speaking on the behalf of a group of people that you aren't a part of, or at least they don't see you as a part of, right? So it's kind of like a weird situation because it's like, on one hand, if you don't speak out on the issues, then folks will call you out on it. But on the other hand, if you do speak out, it still ain't enough. It's like a weird situation there. You know, this is sort of how monoracial black folks play the fence, right? They tend to pull, you know, the racially ambiguous, biracial, mixed folks in and out of blackness when convenient, right? When convenient. Also, the Pusha T, has he been speaking out on black issues? Because honestly, the first time I've heard of Pusha T was with this whole Drake diss track situation. Honestly, me personally, you know, you know, and honestly, at this particular point, I don't think Drake needs to really speak on black issues unless they pertain directly to him. You know, unless he feels like this particular black issue is negatively affecting him, you know, and people who resemble him. You know, like, again, do we put these same expectations on monoracial black folk that we're trying to put on biracial black identified folk? You know, and you know, these folks would probably want to scream, you know, culture vulture, right? Culture vultures, right? But there's some black culture vultures, some monoracial black culture vultures too. But they don't get called out on it though. You know? And honestly, if Drake came out tomorrow and spoke on some major black issues, would it really change anything? One, for black people. Two, for kind of like how black people would see Drake and people like Drake. Would it really change anything? Would black people even really appreciate it? What they wanted? Would they really appreciate it? You know? And as well, I think these are things that monoracial black men need to be spearheading and pushing for themselves. You know, where is this, you know, thug, super masculine masculinity when we really need shit done? When we really need people to speak out on some shit? Where is it? I don't, like, where the hell? Like, hmm. But these dudes, particularly these monoracial dudes, men, these folks, they are going to continue to be put on a pedestal for doing little to nothing, honestly. And they will not reciprocate putting you on the pedestal either, honestly. I took, I did a Google search of Pusha T's wife, and she kind of on the lighter side. I don't think she biracial, but she kind of like on the lighter side. It kind of depends on the lighting. On in certain lighting she can look light skinned, and certain lighting she can look kind of peanut butter. I'm just putting that out there for you women now. But hey, y'all seem to love it, so y'all seem to like it. It seems like it's pretty cool with you. So hey, if you like it, I love it. You know. And before I go, I just want to put out one more thing. I think it's great. I think it is truly a beautiful thing when, biracial people do identify as black and do take on black issues and um, whatnot as their own. You know, especially considering the fact that oftentimes the society we live in kind of sends the message as if black is something bad and that black is something to distance yourself from and to run away from. So I think that that's great, but I don't think it's great when monoracial black people pull and push biracial black identified folks in and out the community when convenient. And kudos to Drake for not letting himself get played like that. Right? Don't just share the black struggle, because when it's black struggle, it's like black folks want to include any and everybody when it comes to that. When it's black happiness, black joy, something positive, then all of a sudden, folks start being wanting to have standards, strict standards and qualifications about who is black and who's not black. So, yeah. So, basically hold these monoracial black men to a higher standard. Well, hold them to a standard, really, because I don't really think there's even a standard right now. Hold them to a standard and make them live up to it.